I've always wanted to become a therapist, and my first step was to go into the university to study psychology. And what happened to me there was that I felt that the what was taught, the way everything was taught, everything was, it was so cold, was so distant, was so, like, one of the things that I thought was, how can all this theory that is so detached from the human experience help me be with somebody else and be of help to somebody else? So I had my issues there. So I left university, and then many years afterwards, I went back because I still wanted to do this. I still wanted to be with people. I wanted to have this, to find this different interaction. But again, I only found it when I got into touch with counseling, and specifically the Carl Rogers person-centered approach. So then I felt, oh yes, this is it. This is the way I want to relate. I only found it when I got into touch with counseling, and specifically the Carl Rogers person-centered approach. So then I felt, oh yes, this is it. This is the way I want to relate. This is the way I want to listen to my teachers, to have the experience, to have it was so different. And at the same time, I got to know about focusing, and that was the top of the cake. We say that in Spanish, la frutilla de la torta, the best thing. And then I began to work as a therapist. And the more I began to work as a therapist, and I began to let myself be seen, and to trespass these places where we want to do something. I'm talking about myself. At the beginning, I really wanted to help people, to do something, to
yes, that desire to help.
And how, Lynn, yes, and how that desire to help can be such a limitation, can be such an obstacle, because it's like we are trying to do our thing, and now what's coming to me is Jen Lynn's putting nothing in between. This really, that is he speaks about the manner of interaction, and what kind of interaction we need to be in order to allow for change to happen. So when I could really realize that the most important thing that I could do was to really be present, really be present there as a human being, as Jen Lynn says, to be present as a living being, to see. When he speaks, when in the primacy of human presence, he says, when I'm just here with my eyes and there is this other being. So this is what I feel is so important, to really be there. So there are many things that we as therapists can do and also be, but the being is so important in this interaction. The being that is seeing the person there, and that has this attitude of really wanting to see the person there, behind the issues, behind the situations, behind the problems.
Yes. And what a difference it is when you're seeing the person behind the eyes, and you're taking in the amazing miracle that person is, that world, that whole world that person is, rather than seeing what is the problem and how do I fix it? And what is wrong with this picture? Why are they being that way when that's self-destructive or self-limiting? They could be this way. And why aren't they focusing more or inside? Why are they saying it like that? It's a very, very completely different thing as a therapist, and also, of course, as a client, to feel that your therapist is listening to you to see what's wrong with you and how to fix it, or the therapist is seeing the process that you are and how it's unfolding in that moment.
Lynn, what you're saying, I have many, many quotes here, but what you're saying leads me to a wonderful quote from Martin Buber that I want to share with you all. And I would like to invite you to listen to it with our whole bodies. In this way, we listen in this different way. And he says this: the perfected man does not interfere in the life of beings. He does not impose himself on them, but he helps all beings to their freedom. And here he's quoting Lao Tse. Through his unity, he leads them to unity. He liberates their nature and their destiny. He releases Tao in them. Oh. And I find this is so enriching, because when we allow for this space to be created where we really listen, where we really receive the person there. First of all, this is something that we all need. We all need to be seen, to be really seen for what we are. So when this happens, there's something that opens up, as if there's a kind of spark, because the person is seen and that they can allow themselves to be. So this is the type of interaction that I think and I believe Janlin is speaking about, that it has to be, in somewhere he says that it has to be a different interaction to the interaction that happened when a stopped process happened. So when we are that different type of interaction, there's something, and those stopped processes there are allowed to move forward in so many different ways.
Yes. It's seeing that healing in the moment, rather than only looking at it over a span of time. And that as we speak about something that's traumatic or hurtful, or that we're caught up in, and the person sees us, we feel in that moment a kind of release, a kind of letting go, or the picture being bigger. I think it was Brother David that said that it's in being known that we know. It's not knowing particular things, but the kind of knowing that's one process with being known. It's we find ourselves by being found. We understand ourselves by being understood.
And the importance of that is so huge, so huge. It changes everything. And there's a quote here from Martin Buber too, where he says, "I realize myself at the contact of thou. As I become I say thou." He says, all real living is meeting. And then he goes on to say this: that I found so important. No aim, no lust, and no anticipation intervene between I and thou. And this is what Lynn says about keeping nothing between. Desire itself is transformed as it plunges out of its dream into the appearance. Every means is an obstacle. Only when every means has collapsed does the meeting come about.
Wow. I have to take that in. Only when
every means has collapsed does the meeting come about.
Let's just be with that for a second. I wonder if you could say what that means to you, Naty, and maybe we could bring people in for a minute to see what it means to them and then come back to our other point. Sure.
I'd love that. It's like when every means has collapsed, when I don't have an agenda, when I don't want to change anything, when I don't want to do anything specifically, and I can, of course, as Jean says in The Primacy of Human Presence, I can have all my theories, and the more the better, because I might need them and I might use them. They are there, but if they get in the way, they could be limiting. So this is what I believe and what I think about this phrase. Only when every means has collapsed does the meeting come about. When I'm not expecting anything to happen, because what I can just be expecting to be that presence, and for the person there to do whatever they need to do, because it's their inner process. It's not the therapist who's going to impose anything, but it's the living forward of that person in that interaction. And when we were discussing this, Lynn, you mentioned something about gently saying, and correct me here, because it was something like, when Lynn speaks about focusing on the interaction, not on myself or not on my inner being, focusing on the interaction itself, something like that.
I think it was the quote that Jean says, that we don't focus in ourselves, we focus inside the interaction.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes. And what happens there.
Yeah.
In that space in between, in that interaction, and that interaction is what brings about the change and the possibility for change, because it's of course it's the process that the person does within themselves, and focusing and attending to and being with whatever, but there's something that allows for that in different ways when we are with somebody who's really present.
Yes.
As Jean says.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. And there, right there again, the person isn't focusing within themselves, they're focusing within the interaction. And later in the breakout rooms, we're going to experiment with that. But I want to say, Naty, that you just helped me enormously, because I'm working with someone who is so depressed and so disheartened and so at the end of his rope. And some part of me feels like, I don't know, we've tried everything. and no avenue seems to help there in this time. And Jean says, do anything and then go back to listening. So the anything could be to reframe something, to bring the understanding of other people in there, all kinds of things, but nothing helps. And when you told me what that quote means to you, I thought, oh, all of the means have collapsed. And now the real meeting can happen because I know that I can't help, right? There's something so profound about saying, no, I can't help. There's a big process that has us, that we are within this big life process, this big evolutionary process, this big carrying forward process that is in most cases stronger. It's always in some way stronger than the what crushes us, right? And that we're within that process. So I don't have to help.
Wow, and that's so liberating also. As I was sharing before, when I started out and I had this feeling that I had to help. Oh, and that was so, so not like that. And this just knowing that the best thing that I can do is to offer my real presence, but the really being presence, and that is different because I can be present, and I can be really present. I can be really curious. I can be really wanting to know what how the person is living their own. Of course, I can never know, but I can try to get as close as I can to really understand, to really, and this allows for something else. And the note, and if you allow me, I'm going to read something because of what you just said, Lynn. It brought me back to a quote that Carl Rogers writes in his book A Way of Being, but he quotes Friedman here.
Neil.
And it goes, yes, and it goes like this. If I keep from meddling with people, they take care of themselves. If I keep from commanding people, they behave themselves. If I keep from preaching at people, they improve themselves. If I keep from imposing on people, they become themselves. I love this. I love this. And I really feel like we can really make a difference. We can really make a difference when we as therapists have this attitude of this, and I would say humble in a sense, but not in a humble in the sense, because I'm all for knowing many things and many different theories, but humble in the sense that I don't know. I really don't know. The person knows what their living forward process is. I don't know. But what I can do, and it's not a little thing, it's a really very important thing, is I can be there as present as I can in this way, like really seeing the other person. And I love this in every, because this has changed my life in so many ways, not only as a therapist, but also as in my relations with everybody. It's like I used to be in big groups, and there are always people that are shyer or that don't. And when you really get close to them and want to see, and just saying a hello, or just really letting them know that you're seeing them, something comes up, something is allowed to appear in that person. And I believe this is so wonderful, this way of being. As I love the title of Carl Rogers' book, A Way of Being, because I believe it is a way of being. This way of being, this way of being with people, and this way of being as therapists also. There's so much that we can do or be, as I like to say.
Yes. It's and your being, this attitude that you're telling us about, and saying that it's all in the attitude, and the attitude is what makes us really present, is that wanting to know, that surrender. There's a kind of surrender in the and wonder about, what's there. Sometimes it's difficult for us to find that when the person is very discouraged, and then we can, of course, also be very discouraged, but to just with that attitude of being open to the not knowing,